Today I have a special episode, and it's actually not related directly to pregnancy in Japan, but more about mothers-in-law, Japanese mothers-in-laws, mother-in-laws. And therefore I invited again Alice. Seems I like to communicate with you, Alice.
No worries for me.
Thank you for being my guest again, Alice.
Anytime.
Hi. For those who don't know you yet, Alice, you are from Australia. You live in Japan for quite some years, for five years.
Yeah.
And you are married to a Japanese man, and you have a daughter who is now today 1.5.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, because you have a Japanese husband, your mom-in-law is Japanese.
Yes.
So generally speaking, or before we start, I have to ask you my unconventional question. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. Sure.
So for moms who already have moms who have a baby, what would you consider as a good place to go to play in Tokyo with a toddler, with a baby of 1.5 years, more or less?
Yeah, well, I mean, mostly my daughter and I'll take her to a park right across from my house, Komazawa Park, and it's quite big. So we spend quite a lot of time there, but just sort of looking at different parks around your area is always nice for a bit of a change. And I also take her shopping with me a lot, and I put the cart down low enough so that she can grab the ingredients that we need and put them in the cart herself, which she really enjoys. And, you know, it's better than trying to chase after them inside the shopping center or something. So it's actually quite a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice. She likes to help you, huh? And she learns.
Yes.
To know all the products and vegetables and fruits, right?
Yes, exactly. We need a lemon or we need some natto, and she'll go get it.
Oh, good. Good helper. Good, thank you. Okay, my first question would be, generally, how would you describe your relationship with your mother-in-law?
Well, before my husband and I got married, she and I didn't really speak much at all. Her family was quite opposed to our marriage in the beginning, and they really wanted him to marry a Japanese woman. So, yeah, it took a while for her and I to even be able to communicate well. She wouldn't look me in the eye. But yeah, once that now that I've had a chance to get to know her after we've been married for 3 years or so now, I think, then I've, come to hang out with her more, and she's very kind and she offers to help me a lot if needed. So.
But you speak very well Japanese. You're a translator, so communication,
Yeah.
language barrier wasn't there, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Exactly. We didn't really have that.
But she still, before she probably preferred a Japanese woman for her son. And
Yes.
why do you think, why was that?
Well, I believe that she had always obviously had probably the image of her son marrying a Japanese woman because that's what she knew, that's what she did. And, Japan is obviously a very homogenous society. So to have somebody else from the outside come into her country and her family was probably not something she'd ever considered. And I think she also thought that perhaps having such different cultures might mean that our relationship couldn't be as deep, or as we wouldn't be able to get through a lot of issues and differences between the two cultures of Australian and Japanese. So I think that kind of worried her. And that was probably, I haven't asked her directly, but that was probably a big factor.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, people usually like what they already know, right? And everything
Yes.
what's different and what they don't know yet, it might be a risk, or it's maybe also a challenge. And
Yeah.
yeah, Well, good to hear. It turned out well, your marriage to your husband and also the relationship to her.
Yeah.
And when you announced your pregnancy to her, how did she react?
She was very happy, but also quite matter of fact. So she sort of was, I didn't get the reaction, I suppose, I was expecting. When we told her, she said something along the lines of, well, naturally, I was assuming you would be pregnant soon. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was a bit taken aback because in Australia, when somebody announces their pregnancy or marriage or any sort of, those big events, but particularly a pregnancy, then everybody's like, oh my goodness, congratulations. And so I suppose that's what I was expecting, and when it didn't come, I was like, oh, shock.
Yeah, shock. So she did expect after you get married that you get pregnant directly, probably.
Yes. So I think she was just assuming that generally as soon as you get married, the next step is to have a baby. And so she had probably been waiting for a while, because we didn't get pregnant straight after marriage. It took a while.
Yes. Okay. And once you were pregnant, did she give you any particular advice? I probably already was talking about in other episodes about how different just from people you meet outside, they would, for example, when you go outside with a newborn baby, they don't want you to go out with a newborn, things like this. And this just, for me, married to a German man and having a Japanese mother-in-law, what advice did she give you?
Yes, well, I mean, that's very true with the whole not going outside with the baby for the first month or something. It is, they're like, don't leave the house. Like, what, really?
Why?
Yeah, I'm going to take my baby out in fresh air. It's okay. So her advice was mainly things like having a lot of rest and covering my ankles, which apparently is something Japanese people believe you should do, is cover your ankles, keep them warm. And this is because apparently they believe it links to having a difficult labor. So that was interesting, something I'd never heard before.
Yes, they told me the same in the birth center.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I was pregnant during like the 8th month was like around April, May. And so I asked, but it's getting really hot by now in Tokyo. And so I asked the director midwife, so I still have to cover my ankles? She's like, yeah, thick cotton socks. I'm like, okay.
Makes no sense to me. Yeah.
Very Japanese. So did you cover your ankles?
No, I didn't.
In July and August, being pregnant in Tokyo.
Exactly. No, I didn't at all. And sometimes, I'd go to appointments for things, and the doctors or nurses or whoever would see that I wasn't covering my ankles, and they'd be like, oh, you should cover your ankles. And then I was like, yes, I know, thank you. And then I would leave and not do it. But sometimes, just to prevent being told by everybody to do it, I would just do it before I go into the clinic or the hospital or whatever, and then take them off as soon as I left.
Yeah. Did the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she did tell you cover ankles. What else?
Yes. Oh, so
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, not at all. So I had researched a lot about labor and birth and everything. And though I knew my mother-in-law obviously had experience because she has 3 kids, and obviously this was my first, so I had never done it before. But I had a lot of preferences and things that I believed would make me comfortable. So I didn't necessarily take on board all of the advice that she gave me, but thanked her for her advice and everything. And then when she wasn't there, I just did what made me comfortable. But so she would often tell stories about her difficulties with birth, and she also would go on to raising children, all the difficulties with raising children as well. And I think it's just kind of the overall attitude in Japan as well is quite focused on the difficulties and hardships and they have this attitude of gaman, and it kind of roughly translates to tolerating or putting up with something. And so it's sort of like it's not going to be pleasant, and they have a bit of a negative view, and you just have to deal with it kind of attitude.
Of raising children or pregnancy?
Of both pregnancy and birth and raising children. Like, obviously they acknowledge that there are good parts of it, but like, you know, any of the difficulties, it's more of like, okay, just gaman, just deal with it and tolerate it, I suppose. So I don't particularly view pregnancy, birth, and raising children that way. Mine is much more, there are hard portions of it, but that is part of the experience. And I wanted to experience those things, and I found it quite exciting and liberating and interesting. So anyway, I told her that with the birth process, you know, you start talking about it as it leads up to it. And I was telling her that I didn't plan to get an epidural. And her reaction was relieved, because she believes that mothers should experience the pain of labor and birth. And whilst this was not the reason that I chose not to have an epidural, you know, it's just that epidurals aren't readily available in Japan. It's not like it is in the Western world.
Right. Just scheduled and at certain times, not the weekends, not after 5 p.m., right?
Yes, exactly. Most places it's just like between this hour and this hour. Exactly. So, but I think, you know, with everybody likes to give advice and be heard. So we were on the same page, even though our reasons were different. But the fact that, you know, she approved, I guess, is the way it would come across, approved of my decision. Our reasonings were different for that. And my personal reason was just because I was curious about it, what it would be like. And my belief is that thousands of women have done it without epidurals.
Right.
So, you know, I can too. And I just was interested in the process.
Nice, agreed, yeah. Yeah, it's funny how we in our century got kind of caught up with the ideas of epidurals, and it worked for so many thousands of years without, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good option for a lot of people, especially.
Right, it's a personal choice.
Absolutely, yeah.
And do you know, I know you haven't been pregnant in Australia, but do you know, is there any difference in what people recommend in Australia and in Japan?
Well, yes, like you said, so I've never been pregnant in Australia, but the advice that you hear is different. It's nothing to do with covering your ankles or you know, restricting activity unless, you know, you specifically need to for a specific reason. But I think mostly in Australia and probably other Western countries as well, is that it's commonly advised for pregnant women to take supplements, which doesn't seem to be any advice in Japan. They don't seem to say that very often. So I wasn't told to take supplements or anything by my doctor, but a lot of my friends in Australia are always told to take certain supplements. And Japan seems to believe that as long as you have a well-rounded, nutritious diet, then that is all you need. And there's nothing wrong with that too. I think that Japan's natural diet is quite well-rounded and healthy. So that's probably why they're able to do that. But I did decide to take some supplements anyway. I bought mine all online because I couldn't find any Japanese shops. So I did. And that's probably one of the biggest differences between advice in Japan and Australia.
Yeah, I find that's something that quite a lot of foreign pregnant women face here, that there are no recommendations from the doctors about supplements, right? And only if you ask them, as I was in 4 different facilities, I asked in 4 different facilities, what about supplements? And I always say, no, like you said, if you eat well-rounded and you get all your vitamins that you need, Or, okay, if you really want some, we can sell you some, or you can take some. But then it's like, which one should I take? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. What is good for me and for my baby? Yeah.
Very
So,
true.
so I just did probably the same thing as you. I took the recommendation from Germany and got the supplements that are sold in Germany. Do you remember what you took? What kind of supplements?
I can't remember the brand name. I bought them off iHerb, which is quite
Yeah.
universal, I think, in
Yeah.
where they do. And it was one that had, I think, most of the supplement that people tend to focus most on is folate during
Yeah.
pregnancy, which I do think is important.
Yeah.
So I was just making sure that certain things like folate and
Yeah.
magnesium were in there. And, you know, when you get those apps on your phone that tell you the baby's development and what kind of vitamins and minerals are necessary for those stages of development and things. So I was just kind of getting a well-rounded supplement for my well-rounded diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, also like in Germany, you have for pregnancy different supplements for like the first 3 months, for the second trimester, and then for the end of pregnancy. So it's really different to navigate the supplements.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
But once your daughter Melody was born, how did your mother-in-law reacted?
Well, she was in Japan. You stay in hospital for about a week, so she didn't meet Melody until she was actually about 2 or 3 weeks old. So we'd been at home for a little while, and she was very happy for us. And she often comments now when she sees Melody how good and well behaved she is. So, I mean, you know, they're only seeing a little snippet of their life, but yeah, she's very happy to come and watch Melody anytime. So
Yeah, I guess the well behaved is it something? Do you think it's something very important here in Japan that kids are
I
well
do.
behaved?
I do. In Japan, it seems to be because, you know, they're in society, they're always about being accepted by others, and how others view them is quite important to a Japanese person. So they tend to think, you know, a child who is well behaved is a good child because you can take them out in public, and, you know, it's always worrying about what other people think of you, and just making sure that you follow the rules of society and things like that. So, yeah, to me, obviously, I don't think that in Western countries we focus so much on how other people view us. But yeah, as long as my daughter is healthy and happy, then that's fine by me, whether or not she's, you know, every daughter, oh, not every daughter, every child has their ups and downs. So that's fine.
I think for Germany, and I think also other Western countries, the well behaved is kind of not in style anymore. I would say it's more about being an independent thinker. I think that's what parents want for their children today. Huh? So,
Independence, very true. You hear
although
that all.
my grandparents would like the well behaved, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's about a balance, isn't it? You want, like, as long as you just sort of, you want them to be able to do what they want and be who they are, but you also, because, you know, you're the parent, you're the authority person, you do teach them certain norms, I suppose, that they need to respect in order to live with other people.
Right. Alice, today I would like to ask you one last question. What is your general advice for other foreigners or who are married to a Japanese? What's a good idea to maintain a good relationship with a Japanese mother-in-law?
Well, the thing I found most helpful was to know where she's coming from. So think of things from her perspective. And most Japanese people of that generation, her generation, have a very traditional way of thinking. So I found that acknowledging the way she thinks and thanking her you know, when she would say her opinions and advice was important to her, and just, you know, natural politeness, that to something to do. So I think thanking her and then still stating what was important to me, and, you know, then that would be probably the best way to navigate differences is, yeah, thank you and listen, and then do what is right for yourself. So I still do this now whenever she suggests things. So all through the pregnancy and just after birth and up till now, and I'll continue to do it as Melody grows. So any advice that she has that I don't want, I'll just say thank you very much. I'll consider it, and then yeah, and anything that she does say that I do want to implement, I'll say, oh, you know, thank you, that's an excellent idea, I will do that. And, you know, a little bit more actually showing her that I'm implementing something that she said. Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I always have this intercultural trainer glasses because that's my let's say main profession, and you know, every country has its own way of communication, right? And in Japan, we know the communication, it's pretty, what we call in intercultural communication, we say it's high context. So you need a lot of context, and you don't say directly your message, right? It's more between the lines, and reading a bit in the air. What do you think about it? Is that how you also communicate with her, or how you read her? Or?
Yes, that's very true, actually. I think, you know, in Japanese society, when one Japanese person when it's between Japanese people, definitely very between the lines communication, and also showing respect is a big part of it. So, you know, you have certain times where you just bring something over to somebody's house, never going to the house empty-handed, and just things like that. So I think any sort of expectations that she has of the meeting, the initial coming together, I will go out of my way sometimes to accommodate her in her Japanese way, so that when it gets to her hanging out with us and we do things my way because we're in my house or we're with my child, then she still feels accepted, and that I'm, you know, making an effort to understand her side of, you know, her perspective. So yeah, I do feel that it is very much indirect communication, saying things in the nicest way possible, but also still, because I think it's very important that you still just do what you believe is best suited to you and your family, and not just doing what they say because they say it, because they're older, or, you know, any other reason. So yeah, it's just a matter of reading between the lines, but also just straight out saying thank you. You're not Japanese, like you know, the community I suppose we're talking to, we're not Japanese. So she will give a little bit of leeway as well in terms of that. And just saying thank you very much. I really appreciate it. That's a wonderful idea. This is what I was thinking. What do you think? And maybe asking her opinion in return about something that you've been thinking about is probably a good way to make her feel involved. Yeah.
So your communication style adjusted a little bit, right? So you are probably not as direct as in Australia, right?
Yes, yes.
Over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
And do you feel like being now 5 years in Japan, you got really good in between reading between the lines, what people, that you feel if they say something between the lines, you know what they mean, that you probably at the beginning didn't understand directly?
Yes, I think I'm getting better at it, and in Australia as well. I wasn't. I am an introvert, so I'm not. You know, I've never been the type of person to be very forward with what I want or what I think. And so I have, even in Australia, I would sometimes read between the lines with what people were saying. But yes, in Japan, it takes it to a whole new level. So it's like, oh, okay, wow, this requires a lot more, is that what they really mean? Because sometimes they'll say something that's completely different to what they think. And I just remembered my mother-in-law does frequently. She'll come over for a visit and she'll say things directly to my face. Not bad or anything, but we'll have conversations, and I think that went really well. That was wonderful. And she'll go home, and then an hour later or so, I'll get a really long text message from her stating what she actually thinks about the situation. And so she'll be saying, I was thinking about this and I just wanted to let you know. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's what she was really thinking. And then, so sometimes I still miss it. I don't always understand exactly what she wants to say. But her method is to tell me later. Face-to-face for Japanese people is a bit overwhelming. So she often sends it to me in a text. And then I usually, talk to my husband about it, and I say, this text came from your mother. This is what I think. And then I'll reply, but I'll get my husband to check the text before I send it to make sure I'm not being too, rude. I don't want to be rude, but it is difficult. So if there are some miscommunications sometimes, don't worry about it. It's probably not a big deal, but anytime you're unsure is just thank you, appreciation, I'll consider it. Yeah.
It's so different, right?
Yes.
Yeah, only the simple thing that Japanese don't say, they don't use the word no, right?
Yes, no direct no's.
By now I understood, because like sometimes I ask simple question like really simple, like going to a restaurant and asking for a seat for two people, for example, and they like if they have a seat for two people, right? A table for two, and they would go on, and I don't speak very well Japanese, and on, and I'm like, well, for me it's a simple question, and the answer would be very simple, yes or no. But by now I understood, if they decline, if they don't have, if they want to say no, they just go keep up with some explanation or excuses or something. So I know if it's a really long text, then it's no, right? If it's yes, they will just say like, here, dozo, like, come in. Yeah.
Very true. Yes, that's exactly it. Sometimes it can be a bit tiring. It's just like, can you just tell me is it yes or no?
Yeah. It takes more time, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, for business matters, it's a very, it's a huge deal, huh? Communication.
Yes.
Well, Alice, thank you so much for
You're
taking
welcome.
the time. I think you gave us some great advice how
so.
to have a great relationship with mother-in-law and how to deal with the communication. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye, Alice.
Bye.